We have an excellent presentation for you today on version 10 differences as they apply to Infor Lawson financials. A great presenter, Mr. Chris Gordon, who this is his first webinar for getting married. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Not blaming that for any logistical difficulties that we've had here today. You know, sometimes when we set ourselves up to do these, the first one runs into a little bit of issues. I'm going to hand it over to Chris Gordon in just a second. Quick housekeeping notes. We will be recording this session. It will be available on YouTube. We will be editing out our 15-minute delay. We encourage questions. If you type them into the GoToWebinar questions or chat module, Mr. Bill Getty will try to ask them as they come up. And lastly, we'll be sending out a survey after this webinar. You can provide feedback. You can let us know about our delay and so forth. And with that, I'll hand it over to Mr. Chris Gordon.
Thanks, Keith. And thanks everybody for joining today. Like Keith mentioned, my name's Chris Gordon. I'm a financials consultant here at RPI, and we're going to spend the next half hour or so going through the version 10 enhancements that you can expect to see in your new Lawson environment. So the agenda, we're going to first look at the new user interface, which is Ming.le. I want to show you guys what's new in Ming.le compared to your version 9 portal, some of the things you can take advantage of. So the first, part of this presentation will be geared towards that, and then we'll get right into the enterprise financial core enhancements. So we'll start module by module, go through, and what I've done is taken the release notes that Infor puts out and scrape them into what I think are the most relevant and most important enhancements applicable to you guys. And last but not least, there's a ton of new enhanced auditing capabilities. And I've grouped all that together at the end of the slide deck. So once we get there, we'll go through AP, GL, AM, CB, all the different modules, and show you the different screens that will report on those auditing enhancements. A quick little bit about RPI. This is a screenshot of us from our Inforum booth last month. There's about 30 of us here. We got 60 plus consultants nationwide, specializing and certified across all the different Lawson and Infor products. Founded in 1999 and located right here in Baltimore. All right, so first thing, let's talk a little bit about Ming.le, which is the new user interface enhancement. In my mind, Ming.le is the biggest change that the end user is going to see. This is, Ming.le's the out-of-the-box standard default interface to access Lawson data. So this is a little bit different than Portal, and the next couple slides we're going to walk through what are those differences in Ming.le and make sure that you guys are comfortable with this new look and feel and answer any questions you have along the way. But as you can see, Ming.le still going out to Internet Explorer, Chrome, Mozilla to get to Ming.le. The one difference there is that it's not only confined to Internet Explorer. So it is multi-browser compatible here in version 10. And it's not replacing Portal, but it is what Infor is pushing as the default user interface to version 10 Lawson. All right, two different types of Ming.le. We have a Foundation and Enterprise. Foundation is right out of the box. You don't pay any extra for this. This just comes with your version 10 system. Ming.le Enterprise is a step up. There's some added features to it. You get all of the features from Foundation, plus some added social business components like paparazzi and Twitter tracker and things like that, where it allows you to kind of dive deeper and track a lot more business objects within your Lawson environment. But just so you guys know, there are two different types of Ming.le out there, but we're going to take a look at Ming.le Foundation. So this is just a screen print of Ming.le, what your, in this case, PO20 is going to look like in version 10. Notice right off the bat, right, there's a different color change here. We have a white and gray compared to your old white, blue, and green. And what Infor has done is removed, in version 9 you have your favorites and hotkeys all off to the left here. What Infor has done is taken all that and consolidated that and put it across the top. So we have our bookmarks, any of your favorites. Those are all going to be drop downs from the top part of that of that menu. And what's nice about that is that it's kind of cleared up space, right? You don't have all of that junk cluttering up the left side of your screen. It's removed. You can just focus on the form and the data on the form. You'll notice at the top here too, we have, depending on your security and what you have access to, different extensions. So if you have LBI or MSCM or RQC, all of those extensions or those shortcuts out to those tools or applications are going to be living up on the top of your banner. All right, and the big one, the main one, is the globe. So that's going to launch Portal. You log into Ming.le, you click the globe, and that's going to bring you into Portal. And that's where we are here, where you can get to all the forms that you usually go to. So one new thing in version 10 Ming.le is this idea of the contextual applications. And what I've done here is click this gear icon in the top right to bring up my contextual application library. And this houses all of the different standard out-of-the-box widgets or contextual apps that Infor is providing you. We're going to take a look at two of these. And the first one is going to be our rec to payment widget. So as you can see over here, the contextual applications stay on your form. And in this case, I opened up the rec to payment widget. And this is only going to be populated from the AP20 form. All right, so you inquire on an invoice on AP20, you pull up the widget, and it's going to display, in this case, we have a PO related to this invoice, we have invoice information, and we have payment information. Right, so it's doing that drill back for you. Obviously, if there was a requisition that initiated this all the way, back upstream, we'd have rec information there. PO information, PO number, vendor, PO date, if it's been received or not yet, right? So if you are matching, this is a real quick way to see, is this match going to actually happen? Has this purchase been received? Have these items been received? So what Infor is trying to do is push this information to you, right? Your AP clerk might find this type of information pretty valuable right on this form. The next one I want to talk a little bit about is the invoice payment details contextual application. Similar to the one we just looked at, but like I just said, the different forms drive these contextual applications. All right, so for this invoice payment details application, AP30, AP30.2, 30.3, 30.4, AP90, 91, AP45, all of those forms will drive or will populate this widget. And in this case, I'm just on AP30.2. I inquire on an invoice, and I get some nice information about this invoice, right? I see the invoice information. I see in this case that it's been paid with a payment number, the cash code it's been written off of. I also see some bank transaction information. So if this payment's been reconciled on CB80, that information is going to show here. Okay, so these, again, to summarize, live on your form, will travel with you no matter where you go. And each one is going to do something a little bit different. And the two that we highlighted here specifically pertain to an AP clerk or an AP manager looking at a drill around functionality, more or less, from an AP20 or an AP30 invoice maintenance form. All right, so something else nice in version 10, there's a data verification. After your form number, it's going to display the product line that you're in, so you don't have to worry about being in a training versus test or training versus prod product line. You can have that display right on your right next to your form number. All right, so the next thing, status bar updates. What's nice about this is that when you log into Smart Office and you start going, in this case, through an AP20 and looking at invoices, it's keeping track of what you're looking at, right? And I'm scrolling through invoices, and then I come down and click this up arrow at the bottom, and it's showing me every invoice I've looked at. And those invoices that are links, that are blue, will actually take you back to that invoice that you were looking at before. So it's a nice way to just, go back and forth between, invoices that you were looking at before. It's just keeping track of those records and making it quicker to get back to things you've looked at before. And that's the case not just on AP20, but on all the other forms that you go to too. So GL40, GL10, things like that. All right, list view. So this is one brand new enhancement in version 10 Ming.le that you did not see in Portal. So I have another quick video here to walk us through how you can take advantage of this. And what's nice about list view is that certain forms will display in this list-driven form. Not every form's going to, but certain forms will. And in this case, we're going to take a look at AP10 and demonstrate why is this beneficial, or why is this list view an effective feature in version 10. So what we have here is, obviously this AP10 form doesn't look like it does in version 9. And what we can do here is search for specific, in this case, vendors directly on the form. So I've typed in up to the search bar a vendor I want to search for, click enter, and then I can get to that vendor directly. You just back out that filter criteria and click enter again, and it's going to refresh to bring up your full AP10. There's other ways to search too, so it doesn't have to just be equals. You can have does not equal, contains, does not contain, starts with, ends with. So there's a lot of different ways that you can search and filter within this list view. You can see here there's other statuses that you can filter on too. All right, so what if I wanted to get to AP10? Well, just go over, you can either double click the row or just click launch vendor form from the far left, and that's going to bring you to the AP10 form that you know with that vendor that you inquired on, right? And then the top left button, the show form and show list, that's just going to toggle you back and forth between the list-driven form and the regular form. All right, so like I said, AP10 is not the only form that will display like this. GL40 is another one. So if you have a bunch of journal entries out there, this is a nice way to filter down to get to specific journal entries that you need to see. You are, I've gotten this question before, you are limited to the columns that Infor provides, so you can't add new columns. You can only search and filter based off of what's already there. And just like this, you type in period 12 you want to get to, and I need to see my accrued utilities journal entry. I can double click right on that and launch GL40 with that journal entry inquired on. All right, so I always recommend testing this out. Go into your version 10 test system and turn this setting on. This is where you go to get to the setting. Right next to your form number, go to user content. And then the use list view presentation is the setting that you want to choose to say yes, turn it on, or uncheck it to turn it off. What's also nice is the fact that you can say, yeah, I want to keep list view on, but I want to exclude AP20 and I want to exclude GL40, for example. And that just means that those forms won't display in list view, but all the other forms will. Okay? And actually, this is in the latest version, I think 10.0.7 of Ming.le, or of Lawson, you will have the ability to export that list. So you can right-click directly on that list view and export the contents of that search set. All right, let's talk a little bit about AP. First up is AP 144, the TIN matching, your tax identification matching form. And this is a brand new job. Lawson's put it in there to give you the ability to run reports to validate that the vendor's TIN numbers are accurate. So you run the report, it's going to create a file that you can then send to the IRS to validate that that vendor is legitimate. You run this by vendor group, vendor class, specific range of vendors, or just for one vendor. The way that this would work is, this is an AP10 screenshot. You would come into your 1099 info, if I had just run that AP 144 report for this 1,000 vendor, this submitted for verification would change to yes. And then once I get notice back from the IRS that it's a valid vendor, I can switch the second TIN notice received to yes. And that's just an internal control to let you guys know that the vendor is a valid vendor. All right, so AP 00.4 on your AP company, there's a new field, or two new fields technically, that is going to control the invoice date that is allowed to be entered on your invoice. So this is to prevent any AP clerk errors on the AP 20 form. This isn't regulating the post date. That's the field that's up on the top right of your AP 20. This is regulating the actual invoice date. So you can put in a range here, say you want a 3 or 4 month range, and Lawson will give that AP clerk a hard stop if they enter that invoice outside this date range. A really good way that this can be used, well, a benefit of implementing or using this feature, I had a client before that put in the invoice date of the current day, but the year of 2017, and they were curious why that invoice wasn't paying. And obviously, when they ran AP 150, it wasn't picking up the invoice because it was paying they're at a due date of 2017. So if you have terms set up on the vendor and you put in a specific invoice date, and let's say a net 30 defaults, you're technically not paying that vendor, right, until 2017 shows up. So this is a good way to limit or regulate or control what the AP clerks can put into AP 20. AP 190, just a small change here. You can run this in update mode first. It's just a flag at the very bottom, flip that to yes. There's also the ability to assign multiple withholding rates to vendors in addition to the federal withholding code. So on AP 08, this is a brand new form. You can add as many secondary withholding codes that you need and apply them to your vendors, and those codes will default down onto your invoice. Couple things. There's a lot of stuff going on in AP. I've tried to scrape just the most important things, but there's a bunch of stuff. AP 10, you can attach documents to your vendor. So if you wanted to have a W-9 out there, you can right-click the vendor number and put in a link to a document. AP 520, your invoice interface program, now has the ability to confirm what's been interfaced. So in your APC to invoice or APC to strip file, you have 100 records that you're trying to interface, and only 95 of them get through. So AP 520 is going to tell you that there's a 5 record count discrepancy there, instead of you having to go to AP 52 and inquire to see what's been left over from that run. AP 14.5, there's a FATCA setup required. So if you have non-US or non-Canadian vendors, you need to have FATCA information put in there. There's also, I found this out, a knowledge base article out there that has a patch that can kind of circumvent that requirement if you need to do that. And last but not least, within AP is a certification date. So under the options tab on your vendor, you can actually define a time frame where vendors are licensed to do work for you and invoice you. So what I've done is create the certification date code and said this is effective from January of this year through August of this year. And it's limiting the date that AP clerks can put on that invoice, or it's really limiting the dates the vendor can send you an invoice. So if they're only licensed to do work for a little bit of time, you can stipulate that here, and you'll get this nice message to say that if you are entering an invoice outside of that date, that the date's outside of that certification date. All right, I lied. We have a couple more things. AP 150. So you can now put general comments on a check run or an ACH run or a pay cycle. So this AP 150 comments, I forget how many characters it is, but it's more than enough. You can type in general comments to print on all the remittance information on your payments. And what you'd want to do is make sure that you have, in this case, AP 155, I'm going to be cutting a couple checks. And I want to include those comments that I just put on AP 150. You'll just want to make sure that you have that print comments button checked off. All right, 4 more things. AP 210, your vendor listing report, you can now, there's a create date and attributes field added to that report. So if you wanted to get specific vendors based off of an attribute, you can run that listing that way. Or if you wanted to do a create date filter to say I only want to see vendors created within a certain date range, you can do that. Small thing on AP 270, your vendor payment history, your company group. So if you got more than one AP company, you can now put that whole group in there and run it once. AP 135, your vendor invoice audit report. You can now sort this by operator. So if you wanted to see who's doing what are they changing, you can make that sort at the operator level. This second to last one, the match and invoice process will allow zero cost items. So you can now have a zero cost item on your invoice and match it to a PO and a receipt that was a zero cost too. AP's 703, this is a brand new form. It's actually an update program. So the scenario here is you have an AP company that processes invoices within batches, and you wanted to switch that to remove batches and process via an authority code. As you may or may not know, you can't make that change if you have unreleased invoices out there. So what this program is going to do is actually swipe through all of those unreleased invoices with batch numbers, take off the batch number, and put in an authority code. So if you are trying to make that switch from batch invoice processing to authority code processing, this is a nice program to make that happen even quicker. All right, what's new in AR? Just a couple things here. There's an object ID that ties the summarized AR application records from that AR subsystem to the interfaced summary transaction to your general ledger. So if you need to do reconciliation between GL and AR, that object ID is going to help you there tie that summarized from GL down to your detail in AR. On your customer, the legal name has been expanded to a character limit of 80. And on the AR 296, your activity report, there is the CSV option, or this include subtotals option, to help reconcile AR invoices back to your billing and revenue system if you are using billing and revenue. All right, what's new in asset management? We have a couple things here. The first being a CSV option on your AM270 account balance report. You might be saying to yourselves, well, why do I need to flip this on if I can just go to my print manager and export that report directly from CSV? It's a valid question, but this is going to give you a better looking format than just exporting directly from your print manager. All right, there's a compute option on AM16. This is your system setup screen, and this is going to allow you to default yes or no as a compute option onto AM20, your quick addition form for your assets. There's some mobile asset functionality too, so via your smartphone, your iPad, you can inquire on assets, transfer assets, update them, scan barcodes, and things like that. There's also geocoding on your location on AM07. So there's actually fields for altitude, longitude, and latitude. You can take advantage of those fields by putting in those exact values, or you can say, hey, I want to use those 3 new fields for something different to track. So you can either use them for what they're intended to do, or you might be able to use them as attributes or something like that. And AM 180 your depreciation report, and AM190 can print only totals if you want to just see high-level summaries of depreciation. For example, you can set that flag to your summary. All right, so a couple new things in Cash Ledger. If you use the Cash Ledger system, CB55 particularly, to make payments instead of, or in conjunction with invoices, this is specifically geared towards you. You can search for, so CB56 isn't a new form, but you can now search via the payee name for cash payments out there. And CB57 is a brand new form, and it's going to allow you to actually cancel those payments. So if you had a CB55 payment that was initiated within the Cash Ledger subsystem, you can cancel that payment within the CB system instead of, I think back in version 9, you actually had to go interface it into AP and then cancel it in AP. So now that information, or now that functionality has been brought into the CB module. And last but not least, CB80 and CB30 allows you to maintain comments on, if you're reconciling transactions and you need to add some more verbiage around, why you're reconciling that, or if there's a difference or something like that. You can add comments to those records. All right, and instead of, if you have a cash code that you don't use anymore, there's an inactivation flag on CB00.2, and then you won't be able to use that cash code going forward. We got 3 new things in project accounting. The first being the AC490 activity reconciliation report. You can run this for multiple years now. So before, this posting years and posting periods was just, just one field. And if you had an activity that spanned 3 or 4 years, you had to run this report 3 or 4 times. But now you can put in that year range, you can put in your period range, and run the report once. What's nice here too, on AC40 or activity journal entry form, you can add comments, documents, or URLs if you need any backup for your AC journal entries. The last thing, AC21.6, it's a brand new form, and what it allows you to do is upload budgets to the AC system. So if you remember, AC21, if you're using that for your budgeting, you need to actually go up to the special actions load before you can upload any budget to your account categories or activities. So it made it impossible to actually use the add-ins upload wizard to do that type of upload. So Infor has created a new form, AC21.6, to essentially allow you to do that same thing. You can upload directly to AC21.6 for life-only budget change orders. All right, GL enhancements. Not too many. By and large, core Lawson functionality has not changed in version 10. There's been new reports and jobs and fields and auditing enhancements that we're looking at now, but you're still going to GL40 to put it in a journal entry, still going to AP20 to put it in an invoice. With that said, there's 2 new things in GL. GL65 is a list-driven form. We showed you that earlier today. Not GL65 specifically, but we did show you that list view functionality. And there's also new system and source codes that have been added because Infor has developed a couple new applications on the Landmark platform, close and recon management being one of them. And there's journal entries that can actually interface from that application to your S3 system. And if that's the case, they need system codes and source codes, and here they are. But obviously, if you don't have close and recon management, you wouldn't be seeing any of these system or source codes in your system. All right, auditing. So version 10 has a variety of new auditing fields or forms and reports. And this is just a high-level look at what has been added to the system. What can you report on now if anything's been added, changed, or deleted. You can see across the board from GL to lease management, it's a lot of setup stuff, right? So AP, we have your company and process level. Asset management, we have your account groups, your setup codes, your AM16 system setup options. Leases, we have, or lease management, we have leases and payment codes. So it's a lot of the setup that you do originally that you can now track and determine what's been changed, who changed it, and things like that. All right, so where can you find a lot of these new auditing functionality? And really just where can you find these differences? This whole presentation is geared upon, you have your version 9 system and your version 10 system, and what's different. A lot of those you can see right from your flow chart. Right? If you compare V9 to V10, this auditing tab wouldn't even be there in version 9. So from here we can see we have our company and process level inquiry forms, and then the same exact type of information at the bottom, just in a report format. So I always recommend go to your flowcharts, and that's a really good starting point to see what is different between 9 and 10. Within AP, so you have to turn on a flag somewhere within each one of these modules to begin auditing. And it's not the same across the board. In AP, it's going to be your company. So you got to go out to AP 00.4, turn on your auditing flag, and from that point on, here's what you can audit. So any changes to your company, process level, AP 89, 89.3, and then AP 189 is actually a report that brings all of that together if you need to email this around. A quick look at AP 89. So I've flipped that flag to say, yeah, I want to track what's been changed to my company. This is the form I'm going to go to, inquire on my company. I'm looking at this line, so that's important, right? You want to have your cursor in the line that you want to report on, more or less. And at the bottom, it's going to show you what the field name is, what the old value was, and what the new value was changed to. The operator, so who did it, the date and time, and the program is just the form, AP 00.4. We're going to go through each module, but we might do it a little quick because we're getting a little low on time. So once you see one of these forms, you're going to see, they all look very similar. So we'll just run through. Within CB, we can audit your bank ID setup, your cash code setup, your company cash code setup. Again, you see the form once, you see it again. Company cash code, inquire. Here's what's changed. AR, you got to go to your customer. Under the process tab, flip a flag, and also change it on your company, your AR10 and your company. Once you do that, you can audit changes to your company and process level on AR88 and 88.3. AC, you actually need to go to GL01.4, flip the flag to say auditing yes. From that point on, you can track any changes to your activity groups, your activity, statuses, structure, account category overrides directly on the form, directly on these forms. And the 200 level series, those are just the reports. AM, again, same thing. Go out to GL01.4, turn that flag on. From that point on, here's everything you can audit from system options all the way down to divisions, accounting unit groups, account groups. And here's another example of what that form looks like. Just remember, the bottom is going to show you what actually changed. And last but not least, our general ledger. What can we audit? Well, first, flip the flag on GL01.4. From that point on, we can audit system codes, detail accounts, summary accounts, accounting unit changes. And then the GL278 is going to be a report form for all of that. So a lot of really good auditing information in there. You can actually track who changed or deleted journal entries. That's on your GL92. Okay. So that's it. I know we breezed through the auditing a little quick. If you
Yeah,
guys have questions.
so I do appreciate Chris Gordon, fantastic consultant, very happy to have him on the team. We're going to take a couple of questions. Bill, do you have a couple of questions that we can give Chris? And any that we don't get to, we'll follow up and we'll send out.
I do. Can you hear me? Okay, in regards to, will you be able to inquire on a released invoice on AP20?
No, yeah, so that's a good question. AP20 is still, you can only inquire on unreleased invoices on AP20. So if you did release that invoice and you wanted to look at one of those widgets, I don't know if this question is in regard to one of those contextual applications, but if the invoice is released, you've got to go to AP30, open up the invoice payment detail widget, and inquire on it there.
And the next question is, how do you switch to list view, and can you export these lists to Excel?
Yeah, so in the latest release of Ming.le, you can export that list to Excel. You can either right-click directly on the results, or there's an export button at the top. The way you turn that on and off is up next to where you go to type in the forms. There's a preferences, or it might even be a gear icon. Click that, go to user options, and then there's a use list view presentation setting, and just check that.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chris. Thank
Thanks,
you,
guys.
Bill.